friends, welcome to Sunflower Hill. I'm Tina and it's spring at the moment here in Australia, so I'm preparing a whole lot of spring things. Spring and autumn are my most busy times on the farm here, and that's because obviously that's when things grow. So both the things I want to grow and the things I don't particularly want to grow cause me a lot of work. I've been weeding, I've been pulling out a lot of grass and things that I don't particularly want to grow, and controlling the boysenberries, which if you plant them, you really do have a lot of work every season making sure they don't get out of hand. The flip side of boysenberries is that you get a lot of food out of them. So there's that, and then there's preparing the ground and getting seeds going for the things that I do want to have growing, which is obviously veggies. It's a much warmer season already this year. Last year was raining and freezing right into December, so hopefully we'll get a better crop this year, better veggies. The fruit trees loved the rain last year, but the veggies sure did not. It was a very poor season. So let's go and see some of the things that I'm doing at the moment. And I'm actually still pruning fruit trees, which is too late. I should have done it in winter, but hey, I had other things to do in winter, so I'm doing it now. And the preparation for the summer crops and stuff like that. All right, let's go have a look. We're going to go into this run here. Alright, chickens being super helpful. Their job as general farmhand, it means that they clean up these runs for me. So this here was where I grew my tomatoes last season, as you can see. Actually, you can't see that's the rest of the tomatoes from last season. So I've done absolutely nothing in this run except let these guys in, and they've done their work. Their good chickening work. Thanks, guys. I can now get on with just loosening up the soil at the sides of this run and planting in it. So that's pretty easy compared to having to get rid of all the old crops myself and the weeds myself. So the chooks have done a great job. Got rid of all the weeds, they've got rid of the old plants, they've got rid of any bugs and pests, eaten any snails they can find. The main thing that remains in this run is these guys, because they are perennials. And they're actually they're edible. There's nasturtiums, the leaves are edible, the flowers are edible, seed pods are edible, and it even has a couple of little flowers on it. Everything else, thanks for your inputs. Everything else, these guys have taken care of. It's all set up with the trellis, the tomatoes, that's last year's remainders of last year's tomatoes. It's all ready to go, and all I need to do is get in here and finish what the chooks have started and loosen up this soil. I do not dig soil over. I don't either do a complete no dig method. I did try complete no dig when I first started up here, but I found that the soil stayed hard. This was previously farmland, and so it was pretty darn compacted. I don't know how much compost you'd have to put on top to get a nice friable soil, but I found it this soil is quite good. So let me just show you quickly what I do to loosen it up, and that's pretty much the gist of this job. And I will give you an update when I have done it. Chooks. Chooks love this job. They do eat the worms, but not many of them. Usually that's why I try not to actually pull the soil up. But you can see how good that soil is now after a few years of adding to it with mulch, compost, chook poo, straw. It's pretty good now. So that all I have to do is loosen it. Just gives those seeds and seedlings a chance to really get their roots in, because these things are annual plants. Come on, chookies. They're annual plants, so they need to grow very, very quickly. So you need to give them a really good head start. Our season isn't long enough. Whoa. So these chooks are preparing the soil the rest of the way. You can see I loosened it and they're scritching it into a lovely soft fluffy topsoil there for me. So the next job here will be to put in my short tunnel, and I'll just put a bit of B-roll of that, and look out for a video on doing that. Because when I do that, I will film that for you and show you what I do. This is my own method of starting my summer seeds, and in fact starting my winter seeds. Some I start in the bus and some I direct sow into my little tunnel. So the next job is one of many examples of this, and that's weeding. These trees grow in a really nice thick wood chips. They're cypress. I get them from the sawmill that I buy my posts from for my big fence. And it actually makes, you can see that they're still, you can see that weeds do still grow in there, but it makes it very, very easy to pull them out, and I will show you that. So weeding is a massive, massive job in spring, obviously because the weeds grow as fast as the trees, and if you don't get on top of the weeds, then they take over. Okay, so under these trees, it's actually very easy to pull out these weeds because they're just in the mulch, and they come out really, don't just come out really easily, but you get the whole roots. So it's a pretty quick job, but before I had the mulch here, it was a really slow job. Another way I weed is by using things like cardboard to suppress the weeds and basically to smother the weeds out, which is what I did in this whole area before I put the mulch down. So that's something you can do to get weeding started, or in a big area where you just don't have time to sit here and do this, just cover it with something really that blocks it out. You can use whatever you've got, even pieces of wood, even pieces of roofing iron. That'll kill the weeds off, and then you can mulch over the top of them. And these weeds just get chucked in a pile and they will compost themselves over time. You can see that didn't take any time at all. And I've cleared that area. Whereas before, the mulch, that would have been really hard going. So I definitely recommend mulching around fruit trees. Very, very, very helpful. Super helpful. Mulch as heavily as you can, and use wood chips. Don't use wood chips on your veggies. I'll go into that another time, but use wood chips around your trees. They set up a mycorrhizal fungi around the roots of the trees as well, which helps your trees in many ways. Helps them get nutrients and communicate with other trees and lots of cool things. Okay, so me being in here is another job. It puts me in mind of another job, which is that I need to prune my fruit trees. So let's go and have a look at one more area that needs to be weeded, and then let's have a look at the fruit tree pruning.
Okay, this is another little area that needs to be weeded. Yeah, we just gotta weed this over spring. That's my older sister's garden. It's my garden. This is my younger sister's garden down here. There's been a bit of a dock invasion all throughout.
And there too you can see what I mean by the invasion of a plant that is a good plant, a useful plant, boysenberries, but that gets out of hand. So they're actually meant to be growing up here behind these fruit trees, and they're really invasive as well if you don't get on top of them. And another kind of weed that I have a problem with, you know, and on any kind of farm or acreage, another thing that creates a huge amount of work is environmental weeds like this. These are young Scotch thistles, and they're not a terrible weed if you've got one or two, but in the right conditions they really take over. And look at the spikes on them, they're really nasty. They really take over, and they like really good rich soil, which is what we have around here. So the positive is that if you have a look around, there's very few. There's this tiny little patch here, and there's not much else, honestly, in my paddocks. And the reason for that is that I have dug them out for the last 5 years, and normally they come up when it gets hot, so it's a really unpleasant job, but it's been worth it, because if you dig them up at this stage, then they don't get to seeding stage. And the paddocks are pretty good now, they're pretty clear. So I'm just going to dig these ones up. I literally just dig them up by hand, I mean by foot. Just have to get the root. That's it. And I'll just leave it there. Okay, this is hard to do with one hand. My son's not filming today, so I'm just going to get on with this and finish this job. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm removing any branches that go into the middle of the tree, and especially if they're touching other branches like this one, because they rub and they damage each other. You get a lot of damage from branches rubbing each other, so any branch that touches another one, you need to cut that out. You need to obviously choose which one you want to keep. In this case, I've got one going up through the middle of the tree and one going across, and I'm actually going to cut out all of them because they're all in the middle of the tree and they're all just creating chaos. So I'm going to cut this and I'm going to cut those. I really love my long-handled loppers. A friend gave them to me and they were a great present. So this job absolutely should have been done in winter. I'm just getting to it now. Early spring is not the time to prune your fruit trees, people. Don't do as I do. Do as I say. Do it in winter. I do like to keep foliage on this tree. Probably I keep more on this tree than I do other trees because it's in front of my bedroom window and I like the shade in summer and the privacy. So I keep a bit extra on this one. I'm going to just cut the top off there for this year. That one's going to have to go. So that's why this tree is a little bit more complicated and messy looking than some of the other fruit trees that I'm just growing for fruit. Because this has a dual purpose. I'm growing it for shade as well. And I'm going to leave that, even though it's growing into the middle of the tree. I'm going to leave it for that reason. And yes, it does make a big difference to the fruit that you get and to the health of the tree if you prune them. I was not a pruner. I'm a very no interfering kind of person, but I tried last year and things that had not fruited for me went nuts and had heaps of fruit. So I really feel like you do actually need to prune, and because this has already started fruiting, I'm going to chop that there and I'll do more on it. That's why you should do it in winter. I'm giving this a bit of a minimal pruning now, just making sure there's not crossing and rubbing branches that are going to cause more problems later on. Okay, so this is a tree I've already pruned. This is an apple tree, and my pruning is not professional. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it basically just opens up the tree and gets rid of any inward growing branches, any branches that grow into the center of the tree. You want to get rid of those because they block airflow. and you want to get rid of any branches that cross each other because they'll rub and damage each other. Something a bit cheering this spring. This tree here is a seed-grown peach tree, or possibly nectarine, and previous to this, the last 2 years, it's had leaf curl so badly that it basically went back to nothing. So last year I tried a completely different tack and I pulled off every single leaf that had any sign of leaf curl on it. It stripped it back to very little and I cut it right back. Anything that I could cut off the trunk that had leaf curl, any sort of bud that had leaf curl in it, I just ripped it all off. And look at this. So far so good, and it's being pollinated. There's lots of bees on it. I don't know if you can see that little guy down there, buzzing. So that's something that's good so far. It's a strategy that's worked much better than anything else I've tried. Okay, now this is the last job that I'm going to talk about today. There's probably a million other jobs, but the main things are these gardens. Okay, so the last garden we're going to talk about today is this pumpkin growing area, which is quite, like, it's as big as a lot of people's backyard. I have it this big because pumpkins need a lot of space. Now I'm going to try something. Last year I tried something, and I'll put a bit of B-roll in to show you that, but I'm going to put out that video. I used buckwheat as a cover crop, and this year I'm going to try something different. The buckwheat worked really well, but this year I'm going to try, just because I have lupins on hand, I'm going to try lupins instead. So I'm going to do that really soon. I'll get the ground sort of opened up a little bit. It's just really still very wet down here, and the chooks are still in here because there's a lot more weeds here. I've just got fewer chooks down here, but that's what I'm going to try. I'm going to try broadcasting lupins and seeing how they go as a cover crop. So what I'll do is broadcast them, get them to, you know, a foot high, and then I'm going to scythe them down and use that instead of buying mulch. That's the plan. Follow this channel to see how we go with that plan, but that's the plan at the moment. The other thing I need to do for spring is obviously, well, not obviously, because you have no idea what sprinklers I had last year, but the other thing I need to do before summer comes is get more sprinklers. So in the areas up the top, I use those long, very simple long strips, and I point them down so that they just go on the ground. That works really well up in the emporium. But here I use a sprinkler, and again I'll put a B-roll in there so you can see what kind of sprinkler I mean. They're just so good. I'm on pumps, and I use bore water to water my plants and pumps to pump it. So there's a lot of systems that people on town water do that I just can't, because I can't be running pumps all the time. So I have to have a sprinkler that I can turn on. It just does the whole area, and then I turn it off again. So I'll be getting more of those. And the other thing I'll be doing for summer is putting up more shade. I know you're going, what? Veggies love sun. Depends where you live. It's very, very intense here in southern Australia where I live. The sun is extremely intense and it burns as much as it helps them grow. So they need some shade. 50% shade cloth for part of the day is perfect here. All right, so now just a quick look around the pumpkin area, and that'll be it for this video because I want to keep it a little bit brief. I just want to introduce the things I'm going to be doing, and then when I do them, I will film them and put out videos for you so you can see how I do things. So this is the pumpkin area at the moment. It looks just really overgrown. But watch this space. He's been working on it, haven't you, mate? Still working on it. Good boy. Good boy. Thanks. Cleaning up the weeds, cleaning up the bugs, fertilizing. Job well done, mate. He's only got 2 ladies down here because one of his 3 wives is raising one chick. One chick. That's another story. friends, it's been absolutely lovely to see you all. Lovely. Thank you very much for joining me on this little spring jobs tour of my place. But for now, it's hooroo from me, hooroo, and it's hooroo from the ducks.